The following presentation is made possible in part by support from Quebec Government House in New York. Welcome to City Cinematheque, where the art and pleasure of the movies are the subject of serious discussion. I'm your host, Jerry Carlson, and I teach film studies at the City College of the City University of New York. Today, it's our pleasure to present the 1992 award-winning film from Canada, more specifically from Quebec, La Sarrazine, directed by Paul Tana. This is a film that takes a look at one of the aspects of Quebec history perhaps we haven't thought very much about, and that is immigration by non-English and non-French peoples. In this case, it's the Italian immigration to Eastern Canada. This is a family chronicle, and it's also one of those films that tells us a great deal about the struggles of all people as they try to adapt to another culture. It's our great pleasure today to welcome the director of this film, Paul Tana, as our guest. Now, take this opportunity to see a terrific award-winning film, La Sarrazine. Welcome back to City Cinematheque. I think you've just seen a major film about the immigration experience in the Americas, and I know we're very proud to have brought it to you. And we're also very proud today to have the co-author of the screenplay, but also the director of the film, Paul Tana, with us. Welcome to City Cinematheque, Paul.
Hello. I'm very pleased to be here, that you invited me, and that you show the film.
Great. This is one of these issues in world film distribution, that a film of this quality, and I should point out that you were nominated for numerous awards. That is the film for the Genie Award, which is the Canadian equivalent of the Oscar, and the film received 2.
Yes, and we had, I don't remember, maybe 11 or 12 nominations, best screenplay, best actor, best actress, I know, a lot, you know. And the film also was showed in Berlin, at the Festival of Berlin, but never in a commercial way here in the US. And that's why I'm very happy that through the television, at least the film can reach the audience, an audience.
Well, I think one of the issues at stake is that, you know, we are a big country, the United States, and so we tend to be forgetful about certain things. One of those things is that at the time of the waves of Italian immigration, the United States was one of the major destinations of Italian immigrants, but by no means the exclusive destination, that there are very, very significant Italian populations in other countries. I think perhaps also because we associate Quebec with the bilingual culture of French and English, that when you then add a third term to it, the Italian, it's maybe a little bit too much for us at times. But seeing a film like this acts as a corrective to that, and I think it tells us a great deal not only about the Quebec experience, but really the way you've structured the story. It tells us about the struggles of adjustment that any group of people.
Completely, yes. Because the film naturally is about Italian immigrants, because I am myself son of immigrants. We arrived in Canada in 1958. But the reality that is on the screen is the reality, even if it's not at the same in the same period. It's an emotional reality that I lived when I arrived in Canada, and also it is a reality that an immigrant, wherever he arrives in the world, in a country, he lives that kind of clash between what he is, what his culture and the culture of the land where he arrives. And so the film is essentially about that experience, that contrast between that immigrant who arrives and the culture of the country where he arrives. And I think also maybe not the originality, because we are not original in a sense. Everything has been said, everything has been done. But maybe the originality in a sense of a film like that is that it addresses a very specific moment of the immigrant experience,
Yes.
and which is the arrival. And I'm not sure that maybe, I don't know, in the history of American cinema, that there was films who were addressing that specific issue, you know, the moment of the arrival. Maybe they've done it, but always by the side, you know, but not directly. And I don't know, sometimes I ask myself, well, okay, we're in Canada and we're talking about that specific moment, because maybe that specific moment is also a very specific part of the Canadian or Quebec history, and also of the people who are, of the immigrant people who are there. It is like, and I was discussing it with my friend Ramirez, who wrote the screenplay, also Nardi, Tony Nardi, who is the screenplay writers. And we said, now, naturally, in the US, you don't have that kind of description of that moment of immigration. And we said, why? Why? Maybe it's an interesting question. I don't have the answer. I have hypotheses, you know, but...
Well, one way we've dealt with it is to always deflect it into one of our genres. And this you know, has created great works of American cinema, obviously The Godfather, the Godfather pictures, but
it's The Godfather is different.
That's exactly right.
In a sense, there are thematics which were similar, but the core, you know,
absolutely,
the moment, the moment of the arrival, I don't think that it has been documented. Maybe in the literature. By Fante and people like that, you know, but in cinema.
There is, I will point out, there's one film, it's almost now 20 years old, that I think some of our viewers would have seen, that is a very good film on that particular moment from the Jewish New York perspective, Hester Street.
Yeah, Hester Street, you're right.
But that's really the exception rather than the rule. There's also a film that the Swedes made a number of years ago.
The immigrants
the immigrants in the new land.
That's it.
But it's really for a country like ourselves that have had, in which, you know, most of us here have parents or grandparents or great-grandparents who were immigrants. It's one of those conspicuous absences, that moment of arrival and all of the drama and the tensions that come out of that.
Because here you spoke about the settlement, not the migration, not the movement, you know, in a sense, when people arrive.
Well, that's that's a key. I think that's a key point, because, you know, our great genre, since I'm talking about us using the genre system for this, is for the urban experience, everything gets put in the gangster genre. But then for the other notion, it's the Western that deals with this, the settlement, etc. But that's very different from your subject of this.
Because probably it's a different experience, you know, a very, very different experience. And also, you know, in the film, what we tried in writing the film to describe is when you arrive somewhere, you have to leave behind something in order to live, you know. In that sense, Ninetta, in the end of the film, you know, you see her wearing black because her husband has died. He committed suicide in the prison because it was too much for his system of values, what he had to take. And so she's in black, so she's a kind of a widow. But how do you say, the deuil is... wearing black.
Well, her manner, it's actually, she's harsh in the black.
Yes, yes, but black is also, you know, you have to leave something behind.
It's mourning.
Yes,
She's
mourning. Yes,
mourning. But
mourning. That's it.
She's
mourning. She's mourning her husband.
Right.
But also, as every immigrant, she's mourning the land in a
Right.
sense that she left behind, the culture that she left behind. And at the end, she becomes a black spot, you know, in the white snow.
Absolutely.
So that there is that contrast. Now, naturally, you are in a new land, in a new home, which is white, and you are part of that land. But at the same time, you are different. You are in black, you know, and maybe with the time, there will be a great integration. A more important amalgam
Right.
of the two cultures. But at the end of that film, there is that kind of reality, a black and white reality.
But that's also something that will take place and can very well be the subject of other films. And for example, is the subject of your most recent film is called
La Déroute.
La Déroute.
Yes.
Mr. Aiello.
Mr. Aiello, yes.
Aiello.
In French is La Déroute, and then Mr. Aiello, it's the English title, yes.
Yes. And in fact, in that film, you deal with what it means when someone has come in a more modern setting and has been successful.
Successful, yes.
And what that means about being holding on too much, perhaps.
Yeah, completely, yes. Holding on too much to the origins, holding on too much on a certain system of values, you know, and then the conflict that it can provoke between the main character, Mr. Aiello, and his daughter, you know.
Right.
And the problem is that if you hold too much, if you don't have the flexibility to adapt, you can die, you know.
Right.
And that's strange, because that is a kind of thematic of those films, you know.
Oh,
that and also the double identity, you know. People in the first year, the first maybe 30, 40 years, I don't know, of immigration, they are maybe very often people who are in between, in a limbo, in a cultural limbo, you know, between the homeland and the culture of the land where they are immigrated.
Right. Well, let's go back to La Sarrasine for a moment, because one of the things that so impresses me about the film is the way in which, as the film moves along in the structure, the women are always present in the film and are always participating. But one of the tendencies is to see a lot of immigrant experience only through men's eyes sometimes, or to sort of idealize you know, the suffering mother who's just a martyr. But one of the things I like so much about the film is that on both sides of the dispute, the way in which the women come to bear the burden of the experience as sort of survivors of this.
Yes. It was it was a very important thematic, and you know, I just want to make a parenthesis. La Sarrasine was born from a real event.
Oh,
we didn't invent.
Tell us about it.
We didn't invent nothing, you know. It happened in Montreal in 1904. Naturally, our imagination constructed a lot of other characters, deepened the main protagonist. But it happened like that, and the story between the two women was a real story.
Right.
The fight between Mosquela and the other French Canadian Duval was everything happened like that. Mosquela killed the French Canadian, and the two women tried to a little bit understand, to go beyond, to go beyond the conflict.
Right.
I mean, also maybe the interesting thing of that event is that those women, through the suffering, through the murder committed by their husband, through the violence, they were discovered themselves, you know.
Right.
Ninetta through the writing, and then the fighting for saving her husband, and also Félicité, which is implicated by Ninetta in
Right.
her in her struggle to survive, and that kind of struggle after the fight of the man created a link, created a
Right.
kind of espoir, hope, you know,
Yes.
for them. But at the same time, you know, someone said to me, "Yeah, you made a feminist film." No, it's not a feminist film. It's
But
the
it is a
story was so beautiful, and that the real story was so beautiful. It was, in a sense, like ready for a film, for a screenplay.
Well, and I certainly
In a
agree with that. Well, one of the things, whether we label this film feminist or not, one of the things the film certainly does is, you know, with a beautiful dramatic structure, is that it chronicles the particular historical forces and circumstances that would shape what these women can and cannot do.
That's
so
it.
so when they try to go beyond this conflict, we not only see that it's an act of personal heroism, but it's also an act of historical struggle.
Completely, and it's an act also of conscience, you know.
Yeah.
People who are belonging
Right.
to different culture, suddenly they are conscious of the other,
Yes.
conscious of the otherness. Naturally, the men are conscious of the otherness, but that conscious brings you to the fight and to a killing.
Right.
But for the woman, that killing brings them to an openness in themselves,
Right.
and also to the other.
Right.
But at the same time, as I said before, for Ninetta, the story ends and it does not end,
Right.
in a sense. It ends because, okay, she, as I said, she becomes a spot in that white snow. And for the moment, she is a black spot.
Right.
And she has to, as I said before, to transform, to be herself, and at the same time to transform, because she also transformed, in a sense, by all the events
Right.
that she went through, you know.
Well, one of the things I think that perhaps is surprising to viewers but pleasing is the way in which there's a conflict here that keeps changing its shape, because who is in conflict with whom and for what reason? Of course, the film begins with you know, this accommodation. It's someone who seems to have acculturated very easily, is
Yeah.
dealing with another class. We have the initial action, which is again a cultural misunderstanding
Yeah.
of a gesture meant in the best way. But then, you know, who is protagonist and antagonist in the first conflict, then gets shifted again to another scale, and then by
Yeah,
the
that's
end,
it. It's a continuous shifting, because at the beginning, wow, you have a man and a woman, they are together, and suddenly there is the murder. Through the murder, now surgis. How do you say that?
everything's thrown in the air.
Yes, everything is thrown in the air, but also Ninetta, the character of Ninetta, is born, in a sense,
yes.
you know. And then, through the during the trial and everything, now you have the fight between those people, a man and a woman who were together, because through that experience, she wants to defend her
Right.
her husband. He wants her to go to Italy. Go back. He said, "You don't have nothing to do here." And she said, "No, I stay because I love you." And she stays, you know.
Right.
So there is a kind of irony in a sense,
Right.
you know. So the protagonist and the antagonist shifts every moment, not every moment, but regularly
Yeah, exactly.
in during the story. Those two women are also antagonists, but at the same time, there is at a certain moment the hope that they understand something
Right.
from one to another, especially when Félicité reads the journal.
Right.
She has a look of the journal of Ninetta, and she says, "Wow, there is something very intimate and very important, so bring it back to her," you know. And so there is an understanding, there is an evocation of
Right.
an understanding. It's not stated, underlined, but evocated.
Right. Let's go to another aspect of the film, and one of the things that was reflected in the nominations for the film, and indeed in several of the key award for best actor that year went to Tony.
Yes, Tony Nardi.
Tony
yeah,
Nardi.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about you're a director well known for your work with actors
actors.
and actresses. How do you present a project and roles like this to these to these actors and characters?
But I think that's the most important work, is to make understand
Right.
the scenes, what the scene is about.
Right.
Okay, and once you have done that job, because it is a very important one, so that there is that kind of understanding between you and the actors. On the set, an actor has to to play,
Right.
to interpret the role,
Right.
and it is his job.
Yes, indeed.
And so it is not your job, to indicate how to play. He knows how to do that.
Right.
Okay, but your job is to, I think, for me, is how to explain the fundamentals of the scene that you have to play.
That's no.
And that's all.
Yeah.
I think. And also there is a complicity which is very, very important between a director and an actor.
Right.
There is an understanding of their needs, psychological, physical, I don't know, but you have to be open, you have to be in there. And I am a director, and I like a lot I like to play ping pong with actors, because if they say to me something, okay, they say, okay, try it, you're gonna see, and there is a kind of openness.
Right.
You have to be open,
Right.
very, very open when in the rehearsal, because when you work with an actor, in the moment that the scene is played by the actors,
Right.
it is the moment of truth, and you have to have the humility.
Right.
To watch if it works or not. If it not works, you have to be very humble and try to understand why, with their help or not.
Right.
Because sometimes you are very I don't know. You want to be very how do you say that? Orgueilleux.
Proud of your work.
Proud, and then okay, no, it's work. No, it doesn't work. You have to have that kind of humility, and it is. I always thinking about Stanley Kubrick, who was saying the same thing. He said that the important moment with actor of directing is the moment with actors,
Right.
the moment of rehearsal.
Yes.
So the scene, will it work or not? It's the moment of truth, because it's the moment where the scene materializes for the first time. And you have to have your eyes open.
Right.
So if you have your eyes open there, if you explain the scene well, if there is an understanding with the actors, if there is an openness to their emotion, they are human beings, Well, if everything goes well, you will have a good character. On the screen.
And you do, and you certainly
I don't
do
know
hear.
if I'm explaining
No,
very
you're
clearly.
saying very well, Paul. And the point is that I think you've created in this film a set of characters that really no one forgets after this film. They have that sense of richness and texture in their interactions with one another. But also, there are films that get out of hand with the actors, that they become vehicles for actors rather than in balance with what the needs of the script are, or in balance with what the cinematic needs for telling the story are. And so what I'm so admiring about this film is that also this is a stunningly beautiful film cinematically. That is a moment like the one you have referred to of her in the black, in the snow, is a perfect expression of that moment in a way that she cannot express it in the camera and the camera
Yeah,
and the
yeah, yeah,
camera
yeah,
can.
yeah, yes.
So I'm interested in how you were thinking about the creation of these characters in this particular era of the set design, of the camera, etc.
Okay, yeah, no. We worked a lot on that, you know. There is a lot because I am very, very not interested, but interested. So let's say interested. I don't know for a better word in English. In details, you know.
Okay.
Cinema is an art of details, you know, and so everything from costumes, you know, the colors of the sets, the light. We thought about it very, very specifically, you know, and we had a reference, painting reference, you know.
This is for older Quebec paintings of the period, or
Not necessarily, not necessarily, no. And but to have the colors, you know,
Okay.
for the colors of the film, and also the découpage, the mise en scène, you
Yes.
know. I wanted to create a certain distance, you know. That's why I always worked on plan séquence,
Yeah.
you know, and which gave a very big freedom to the actors. But
Right.
with,
Long take, I'll explain. Long
long
take,
takes, yes, long
so,
takes,
so
that's
there's
it.
lots of movement within the space created by the camera
That's
movement.
it, and also with a specific objective that I like very much, lens, is that 30 millimeters lens, which you are near the characters, but at the same time a little bit distance, and that gave a kind of theatrality
Yes.
to the interior, you know, also to the film, because I wanted to link all the theatrality of the film to the puppet theater
right.
of the beginning, because the puppet theater at the beginning tells us the story of the film, you know.
Right.
And then you see the small puppets of the story of Tancredi and Clorinda, and then you see the film. So I wanted to create a kind of formal unity, which a coherence, because the ultimate thing in filmmaking, in art, or is coherence, to create a coherent object. You know?
Well, you have given us a coherent explanation
I
of
don't
this.
know
No, yes, you
my-
have. And you know, we're going to have to end with coherence, Paul, because we've really run through our time.
finished, okay.
If you'd like more information about this series or about City Cinematheque, please drop us a line. Drop it to City Cinematheque, City University Television, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016. Let me give you that information again. Drop us a line to City Cinematheque, City University Television, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016. Paul, I can't tell you what a pleasure it's been to have you here to explain this extraordinary film. We're proud to have had the opportunity to show it, and we look forward to having you back here and being able, I hope at some point, to be show some more of your work.
Maybe. Thank you. The pleasure was mine, really. Thank you.
Okay, great. And we hope that you will return to the other pleasures we'll be offering you in the coming weeks on City Cinematheque. Thanks for joining us today. The preceding presentation of City Cinematheque was made possible in part by support from Quebec Government House in New York.